What about their education and future? 53% of our demographic profile today consists of young men below 25 years. 50% of this country is below 25 years in age. Is a young nation. And what we are doing to them, 600 million children are below the age of 14. If you read, as Mr. Sreenivasa Murthy very rightly pointed out, Sir M Visvesvaraya's conception of the appropriate model of economic and social development in India, it is simply mind-boggling that an engineer who could think that was his impersonal love for mankind. That was in fact, if you see his own personal life, you see how a person could develop this kind of attitude in spite of his own things with so many inadequacies of personal life. This was something which was a remarkable personality. I read a number of books on Sir M Visvesvaraya. You know, even in those days, there used to be a retired judge or even a serving judge who wrote nasty things about Sir M Visvesvaraya to Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi wrote to him to say, "Your letters make me sick. Why don't you stop writing to me about it?" But he wouldn't. He wrote 300 pages against Sir M Visvesvaraya. There was another journalist who was a very celebrated old man in Mysore. He carried a tirade against Sir M Visvesvaraya for this Kanambadi, that Krishna Sagar project. He would write big, bold headlines in his paper. He said, "Barido, Barido, Bada, Bore Gaunara Mandara." That is, Visvesvaraya is taking away all the money for the project. See, great men have always had detractors. I sometimes suspect greatness, one of the marks of greatness is that he must have some detractors. Otherwise, the one beautiful thing about this book is it has ledgerized, compartmentalized the areas of, see, an omnibus description of his great thing. One here is construction of a barrage, some heading a committee. The author's policy has been to ledgerize these things. For example, he speaks of the committees Sir M Visvesvaraya headed. It was the Bombay Technological and Industrial Education Committee. There are 10 Europeans and 7 Indians. He was the chairman, Mr. Sir M. Lord George sent for him, the governor sent for him and said, "Don't give any bold recommendations." Sir M Visvesvaraya rejected his request and made a very, very far-reaching recommendation. Obviously, British didn't like it. In fact, they rejected that report of that committee. This happened to the Indian Institute of Science. It was born out of a chance interview a chance meeting between Swami Vivekananda and Tata, Jamshedji Nasarwanji Tata. They were together on a boat going to Japan. Vivekananda asked him, "Why are you going there?" He said, "I'm searching for talent for my industries. I want to get people, engineers and technologists from outside." He said, "How long are you going to go around the world searching for people for your industries? Why don't you train them in India?" Thus was born the Indian Institute of Science. The Maharaja of Mysore had promised a huge grant for it. British didn't like it. Swami Vivekananda, Tata wanted to name the institute after Sir Vivekananda himself. Vivekananda told Tata, "If you name it after me, British will close it down. Don't do it. Name it after Queen Victoria, it will prosper." And Maharaja had promised a huge donation, annual grant. The resident prevailed upon the Maharaja. In those days, this not prevailing is a euphemism for threatening. He threatened him, "Reduce your grant." Ultimately, it came down to 30,000 a year. And it's still the grant that the state government gives to the Institute of Science even today. That's how that institute survived, because it wasn't named after Vivekananda. And if it had been named after Queen Victoria, it would have been a victorious institution. Then there is another beautiful committee, Bombay University Committee for Promoting Chemical Industries. Imagine in the 20s these things were happening. It is a unanimous report. The Bombay Chemical Technology Institute of Bombay was established as a result of this deliberation, the recommendation of this committee. There is the Irrigation Inquiry Committee of 1928. Then the New Capital Inquiry Committee, when Calcutta, the British capital, was proposed to be shifted from Calcutta to Delhi. There is a committee which went into the logistics, the ideas about it. Sir Visvesvaraya was in that committee, and he, Lord Malcolm Haley, was the chairman of that committee. That's constituted in 1922. The Lieutenant's Delhi was built then. Then he addressed the Mysore engineers and to say how important building a new capital in Delhi is to every citizen of India. He said, this is not something of interest to local people, it is of interest to the entire country, and how he conceived a broader role of India in shaping the capital of the country. Then there is this Indian Economic Inquiry Committee, 1925. Then there's one Lord Lloyd had dirtied his hands in back bay reclamation work that was done in Bombay. His name was involved in this scam. Even in those days, Indian soil is very fertile for scams. After a couple of meetings, they shifted the sittings to London. Even then, they said stop further because of British Lord having dirtied his hands. Sir Visvesvaraya was there in that committee. I think it was Sir Grimwood Mears, who was a Chief Justice of Allahabad. He was the chairman of that committee. Then the Bangalore Political Disturbances Inquiry Committee of 1929. That's a very interesting thing. We used to call it the Abbas Khan Galate. That used to be some municipal chairman's name was associated with the provocation for that disturbance. Ganapati temple, Sultanpet, yes. There he was the chairman of that committee. Apart from the incident, local incident that triggered that controversy, the fight, the communal flare-up. The report goes on to say, I must compliment the author for giving what in those days, almost 185 years ago, what were the triggers that were dividing the society. They said about education. They said about so many things which are not directly related to that immediate incident. And of course, the government didn't accept that report. It was a very, very beautiful report about how you must promote harmony in society. An unequal society lives under a constant dread of an impending disaster. So this kind of inequality has to be remedied, and it is a visionary report. Of course, the government didn't accept it. The aftermath was when Sir MV was invited to Sir Mirza's residence. He saw the photograph of the Maharaja in a very beautiful ivory bordered frame, and Sir Mirza's father's photograph on one side, and Sir MV's own photograph on the other side. And as Sir MV entered the hall, he took his walking stick and pointed to his photograph and said, after that report, my photograph has no place here. Sir Mirza said, I have placed you where I have placed my father's photograph. It will always remain there. My respect for you will remain undiminished. That was the greatness of Sir Mirza himself. Then he gives you the Sukur Barrage Works Committee, Bombay Corporation, that is how to reduce the administrative expenditure of the Bombay Corporation. There's a committee of fiscal for Karachi, similar thing for Karachi municipality. Water supply, and for how many cities water supply plans were recommended by Sir M. V. He has given it in a beautiful alphabetical order. The names of these cities, there are about 15 of them, 20 of them. They're all set out in alphabetical order. Then he was not only expert in industries, even in providing plans for drainage and sewerage management. Sir M. Venkatachaliah the very interesting thing is, there is an all-party political conference in 1922, aftermath of Lord Reading arresting such Chittaranjan Das and political leaders. Then Sir Shankar Nair was the chairman of that committee to provide. Madan Mohan Malviya initiated a national conference to provide some solution at a bridge between the government and the Congress party. Sir Shankar Nair was the chairman, he resigned. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was one of the general secretaries of that conference. They invited Sir M. Visvesvaraya to be chairman of that. And the book is replete with such beautiful details. It is these gems of these details that make the book a shining example of what an autobiography should really be. I think I must recommend to the government to ban the author Sreenath from doing development reality work and write books and teach developmental economics in universities. Thank you very much.